The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from 200 different worlds. Captain Dae-hyun Kim stood near the back, his arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold before him. The Galactic Council had been arguing for 3 hours now, and they were no closer to a decision than when they started. Ambassador Mira Choi stood at the human podium, her patience wearing thin. She had presented Earth's proposal twice already, but the counselors kept circling back to the same tired arguments. Behind her, holographic displays showed the devastation. 14 star systems, gone. Billions of lives, consumed. The scourge was spreading like wildfire through the outer rim, and these politicians wanted to form another study committee. The facts are clear, Mira said, her voice cutting through the chatter. The scourge will not stop. Every day we delay, more people die. Earth is offering to lead a coordinated military response. We have the ships, the weapons, and the will to act. All we need is your support. High Arbiter Ullman, a being of living crystal who had sat on the council for 3 centuries, raised one glowing appendage. The room fell silent. When Ullman spoke, his voice resonated like wind chimes in a storm. The human representative speaks of action, but she speaks too quickly. The council has maintained peace for 800 years through careful deliberation. We do not rush to violence. With respect, High Arbiter, Mira replied. This is not about rushing. The scourge has been advancing for 6 months. We've studied them. We know what they are and what they want. They want to consume everything in their path. Counselor Vreth, an insectoid being from the Kessari Dominion, clicked his mandibles together. And how very human. To see a threat and immediately think of war. Perhaps this scourge can be reasoned with. Perhaps they can be contained. Perhaps we simply need more information. Dae-hyun felt his jaw tighten. He had fought pirates in the Belt Wars. He had seen conflict up close. But he had also seen what happened when people waited too long to act. The refugee camps on the border stations were overflowing. Children were starving. While the council debated, Mira pulled up new data on the displays. I'm showing you their pattern. The scourge doesn't negotiate. They don't stop. They're a hive mind that absorbs biological matter to grow stronger. Every world they take makes them harder to fight. If we wait another month, we'll need 10 times the force to stop them. Another counselor spoke up. A floating gas being whose name Dae-hyun could never pronounce. The human assessment is noted, but we must consider the broader implications. If we authorize military action, we set a precedent. What happens when the next species decides their neighbors are a threat? Do we descend into chaos? Better chaos than extinction, Dae-hyun muttered under his breath. The debate dragged on. Some counselors argued for economic sanctions, though the scourge had no economy. Others suggested building defensive barriers, which would trap millions of refugees behind enemy lines. A few species proposed simply closing their borders and letting the outer rim fend for itself. Through it all, Mira stood firm. She answered every question, countered every argument, and presented solution after solution. But Dae-hyun could see it in her eyes. She knew how this would end. Finally, after 5 hours, High Arbiter Ullman called for a vote. The question was simple. Would the Council authorize immediate military intervention against the scourge, with Earth leading the operation? The voting crystals lit up across the chamber. Instead, the Council passed a different measure. They would establish an observation task force to study the scourge. They would offer humanitarian aid to refugees. And most critically, they would prohibit any single species from mounting independent military operations in the contested zones. We must maintain unity, Ullman declared. We must act as one council, not as individual species pursuing their own agendas. This restriction is necessary to preserve peace among our member worlds. Mira's face went pale. High Arbiter, this resolution condemns millions to death. While we observe and study, The scourge will keep killing. Your concern is noted, Ambassador, Ullman said, his tone final. But the decision is made. This council meeting is adjourned. Daehyun met Mira at the exit. Around them, other delegates filed out, many looking relieved. They had avoided war, they told themselves. They had preserved the peace. They're cowards, Daehyun said quietly. They're afraid, Mira replied. Afraid of humans, afraid of change. Afraid of making a choice they can't take back. She looked exhausted. But you're not wrong. This decision will cost millions of lives. As they walked through the station corridors, they passed a viewing port. Beyond the transparent aluminum, space stretched out in all directions. Somewhere out there, the scourge was moving, consuming, growing. What do we do now? Daehyun asked. Mira was silent for a long moment. Then she said, We report back to Earth. We tell the president what happened here. And then... She trailed off. And then what? And then we wait for orders. Her voice was carefully neutral, but Daehyun heard what she wasn't saying. Earth wouldn't sit idle while aliens died. Humans didn't work that way. They had a saying back home, something his grandfather used to tell him. When nobody else will help, you help yourself. 2 days later, Daehyun was on a transport heading back to Earth. He spent the journey reviewing intelligence reports on the scourge. Their numbers were growing. Their territory was expanding. The Council's observation task force hadn't even launched yet, still caught up in debates about funding and jurisdiction. Meanwhile, 3 more systems had gone dark. When his ship approached Earth, Daehyun looked down at the blue-green world below. It looked so peaceful from up here. But he knew what was happening down there. The government would be having urgent meetings. The military would be running scenarios. Scientists would be analyzing every piece of data they had on the scourge, because humans had a problem. They had been told to stand down. They had been ordered not to act. They had been restricted by a council that valued procedure over lives, but they also had another problem. They couldn't watch billions die and do nothing. Somewhere in a conference room on Earth, someone was probably saying the words right now. The words that always came when humans faced an impossible situation. The words that preceded humanity's greatest achievements and worst disasters in equal measure. Fine, we'll do it ourselves. Daehyun smiled grimly. He knew those words. He had said them himself more times than he could count, and he knew what they meant. The council thought this was over. They thought humanity would follow the rules and stay quiet. They had no idea what they had just started. 3 weeks had passed since the council's vote, and 7 more systems had fallen. Admiral Jinho Park stood in the command center deep beneath Geneva, watching updates stream across 100 different screens. Each red dot on the map represented a world lost to the scourge. Each one had been preventable. Show me fleet status, he said. The tactical officer brought up a new display. It showed ships gathering in the dark spaces between stars, far beyond where the Council's sensors could detect them. Destroyers from Mars, carriers from the Luna yards, heavy cruisers that had been in storage since the last border dispute. All of them moving into position. Silent and dark. 312 vessels ready for deployment, the officer reported. Another 47 will join within the week. Jinho nodded slowly. It was the largest fleet Earth had ever assembled. And, according to the Council, it didn't exist. Officially, humanity had accepted the Council's decision. Ambassador Choi had made a public statement expressing disappointment, but promising to abide by galactic law. Trade continued as normal. Earth's delegates attended every boring council session and voted on agricultural subsidies and trade regulations. But unofficially, humanity was preparing for war. What about Dr. Lee's project? Jinho asked. She's ready to present now, sir. Dr. Yuna Lee entered the command center carrying a data tablet. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Which was probably true. She had been working around the clock on what she called the Scourge solution. Admiral, she said, bringing up her research on the main screen. We've analyzed the scourge biology from every encounter. They're not like any organism we've seen before. The individual creatures are just extensions of the hive. They share information instantly across their entire network, which makes them hard to fight, Jinho said. Yes, but it also gives us an opportunity. It showed complex wave patterns. The hive communicates through bioelectric resonance. Every scourge creature is tuned to the same frequency. We've developed a weapon that can disrupt that frequency. Like jamming their radio? More than that. If we hit them with the right pulse, we can cause cascade failures in their nervous systems. The effect spreads through the hive mind, like a virus. Jinho studied the data. Does it kill them? Not directly. But it breaks their coordination. They become confused, aggressive toward each other. It gives us a tactical advantage. There. Action. 2 problem. How many of these weapons can you produce? We've already built 50 prototype units. Give me another week, and I can equip the entire fleet. Jinho allowed himself a small smile. This was why Earth was different from the Council species. When humans faced a problem, they didn't form committees. They built solutions. Across the command center, Captain Dae-Hyun Kim was reviewing battle plans with the tactical team. He had been recalled from diplomatic service the day after the council vote. His expertise in scourge behavior made him valuable for planning the operation. The key is simultaneous strikes, Dae-Hyun explained, pointing to the holographic display. The scourge operate from hive ships, large organic vessels that serve as mobile bases. We've identified 17 of them in the target zone. What if we miss one? A young officer asked. Then, it reproduces and rebuilds. That's why timing is everything. We hit all 17 at once. Plus, the Queen vessel here. He indicated a massive ship at the center of the scourge formation. Take out the Queen, and the entire fleet loses coordination. That's a lot of ships to hit at the same time, the officer said, which is why we've been training for this scenario for 3 weeks straight. In another facility, Commander Heejin Kang was running her special operations teams through boarding drills. They practiced moving through tight spaces, fighting in zero gravity, and planting explosives on biological tissue. The scourge ships were living things, which meant they could be killed from the inside. Again, Heijin shouted as her team cleared a mock-up of a scourge vessel. Faster. These things move, remember? You hesitate. You die. Her soldiers were the best Earth had. They came from a dozen different special forces units, all volunteers. They knew the mission was illegal by council law. They also knew it was necessary. One of her sergeants approached after the drill. Commander. Word from intelligence. The scourge are moving toward the Helion system. Heijin felt her blood run cold. Helion was home to 5 billion people, spread across multiple species. It was one of the most densely populated systems in the region. If the scourge reached it. Does the Admiral know? He's being briefed now. Back in the command center, Jinho was staring at the new intelligence with the same cold dread. The scourge were moving faster than predicted. They would reach Helion in less than 2 weeks. What's the council doing about it? He asked. They've sent observation ships, an intelligence officer reported. No defensive forces. They're still debating whether to authorize evacuation. 5 billion people, and they're debating. Jinho felt anger rising in his chest. He forced it down. Anger didn't win battles. Planning did. Send a message to Ambassador Choi, he said. Have her make one more formal request to the council. Ask them to authorize military intervention in Helion. Sir, they'll just refuse again. I know. But I want it on record that we asked. I want everyone to know. We tried the proper channels. The message was sent. The council received it, discussed it for 6 hours, and then voted it down. The official reason was that military intervention required more study and consultation. The real reason was that half the council members were terrified of setting a precedent, and the other half were terrified of humans. When the response came back, Jinho read it once, then deleted it. "All ships," he said quietly, "begin final preparations. We move in 72 hours. Around the room, officers began executing pre-planned orders. Ships that had been hiding in deep space started moving toward jump coordinates. Weapons were loaded. Crews were briefed. The machine of war began to turn. Dae-hyun found Jinho later that evening in his office. The admiral was reviewing casualty projections. The numbers weren't good. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Even with Dr. Lee's new weapons, they would lose ships. Lots of ships. "Second thoughts?" Dae-hyun asked. "Always," Jinho replied. "But not about whether we're doing this. Only about whether we're doing it right. The council will condemn us. Let them." Jinho leaned back in his chair. "My grandfather served in the Navy back on Earth. He told me once that the hardest choices are between what's legal and what's right. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not." "True. And this is one of those times. This is one of those times." Jinho stood and walked to the window. Outside, you could see the lights of Geneva at night. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware that their fleet was about to start an unauthorized war. "When we move, there's no going back," Dae-hyun said. "Earth will be in violation of council law. We could face sanctions, trade embargoes, maybe worse." "I know." Jinho turned back to face him. "But I also know. What happens if we don't move? 5 billion people die. And then, the next system. And the next. Until the scourge reaches council space, and then they'll beg us to fight." Dae-hyun nodded. He had known Jinho for 15 years. The man was many things, but he was never reckless. If he said this was necessary, then it was. "The fleet will follow you," Dae-hyun said. "I know they will." "That's what worries me." 72 hours later, the Earth fleet jumped into the darkness between stars. They flew in silence, running dark, using routes that kept them off the main trade lanes. The Council's observation ships near Helion had no idea they were coming. Neither did the Scourge. On the flagship, Admiral Jinho Park watched the countdown timer tick toward 0. Beside him, Dae-hyun commanded the tactical display. Below them, 300 ships hung in the void like silent predators. "All ships report ready," the communications officer said. Jinho took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where everything changed. "Send this message on all frequencies," he said. "To the people of Helion. Earth stands with you. Hold on. We're coming." The communications officer looked shocked. "Sir, that will alert the council. They'll know we're here." "No." "Good," Jinho said. "Let them know. Let everyone know. When someone needs help, and nobody else will give it, humans don't ask permission." He leaned forward in his chair. "All ships," he said quietly. The fleet jumped toward Helion. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Helion system, and what they saw made even the veterans go quiet. The Scourge Armada filled the space between the outer planets and the inner worlds. Thousands of organic vessels, some small as fighters, others large as cities. They moved in patterns that seemed random but weren't. They were a swarm, and they were hungry. "Count?" Admiral Jinho Park asked from the bridge of the flagship Indomitable. "Over 4,000 individual contacts," the sensor officer reported. "We're outnumbered roughly 5 to 1. Someone on the bridge swore softly. Jinho didn't reprimand them. The odds were worse than the projections. Much worse. "The council observation ships?" Jinho asked, retreating at maximum speed. "They started running the moment we arrived." "Of course they did." The council wanted to observe, but not from danger. Jinho felt a flash of contempt, then pushed it away. Focus on what mattered. Communications. Broadcast that message to Helion. All frequencies. Yes, sir. Broadcasting now. Captain Daehyun Kim stood at the tactical station on his destroyer, Soul's Pride. He was part of the Vanguard, 20 fast ships, tasked with hitting the Scourge front line. His crew was young but well-trained. They knew what was coming. The broadcast played across all channels, human and alien alike. Jinho's voice, calm and clear. To the people of Helion, Earth stands with you. Hold on. On the planets below, billions of beings heard those words. Many had thought they were abandoned. The Council had sent observers, but no defenders. Now humans, a species most of them had never met, were promising to fight for them. All ships, attack formation Beta, Jinho ordered. Vanguard elements, engage at will. Heavy elements, target the hive ships. And somebody find me that Queen vessel. The fleet split into squadrons and dove toward the Scourge Armada. Flight Officer Junho Baek sat in his fighter cockpit, one of 200 pilots launching from the carrier Daejeon. His fighter was small and fast, built for close combat. Around him, his squadron formed up in a V pattern. Red Squadron, this is Red Leader, he said over the comm. Stay tight, watch your spacing. And remember, these things are organic. They bleed. The Scourge noticed the human fleet now. The swarm began to shift, reorienting toward the threat. Thousands of biofighters detached from the larger vessels and swarmed forward. Here they come, someone said on the comm. The two forces met in a storm of fire and fury. Junho's fighter dodged through a cloud of Scourge organisms, each one the size of a small ship. They fired barbed projectiles and sprayed acid. His fighter's shields held, barely. He fired back, and 3 Scourge fighters exploded in bursts of organic matter. They're fast. His wingman called out. Stay on my 6. Junho replied. Don't let them surround you. All across the battle space, human fighters engaged the Scourge in brutal close combat. The humans were outnumbered, but not outskilled. They flew patterns the Scourge couldn't predict, used their shields to ram when necessary, and covered each other with a coordination the hive mind hadn't expected. Daehyun's destroyer charged into the thick of the fight. His orders were simple. Cause chaos. Make the Scourge focus on him while the heavy ships maneuvered into position. Ramming speed. Daehyun ordered. His crew looked at him like he was insane. He probably was. Soul's Pride accelerated directly toward a Scourge cruiser, a living ship that looked like a twisted mass of meat and bone. At the last second, Daehyun ordered hard to port. The destroyer scraped along the Scourge vessel's side, shields screaming, tearing a wound in the organic armor. Fire! Everything. Point-blank range. The destroyer's guns poured fire into the wound. The Scourge ship convulsed and began to die. Sir, they're trying to board us, someone shouted. Scourge organisms were latching onto the hull, trying to eat through. Daehyun had planned for this. Vent the affected sections, then superheat the hull. The organisms burned and died, but more kept coming. The Scourge didn't care about casualties. They just kept attacking. Commander Haejin Kang was having the fight of her life. Her boarding team had successfully infiltrated a hive ship using stealth pods. Now they were inside the thing, planting explosives while fighting off Scourge defenders. The interior of the ship was a nightmare. Walls of living tissue, floors that moved beneath their feet, air that smelled of rot. And worse things, her soldiers moved through it like ghosts, killing silently when they could, fighting hard when they couldn't. Charges placed, her demolitions expert reported. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they figure out what we're doing. Then we move faster, Haejin said. Next target is the neural cluster, 200 meters forward. They fought through corridors of flesh, losing 2 soldiers to Scourge ambushes. But they reached the cluster, a massive organ that pulsed with bioelectric energy. This was what controlled the ship. Plant the charges, heavy yield. While her team worked, Haejin held the corridor. Scourge creatures poured toward them, drawn by the intrusion. She fired her rifle until it overheated, then drew her sidearm. Behind her, the demo expert counted down. Charges set. Go, go, go. They ran. The explosion behind them was tremendous, shaking the entire ship. The lights, such as they were, flickered and died. The hive ship began to drift. Its control systems destroyed. All teams report, Hagen called over the comm. 3 other teams confirmed successful sabotage. 3 hive ships were now dead or dying. But there were 14 more out there. Back on the Indomitable, Dr. Yuna Lee watched as her resonance weapons were deployed. The first test came from the cruiser Busan. It fired a pulse of specially tuned energy at a cluster of Scourge fighters. The effect was immediate. The Scourge ships began to spasm and break formation. Some turned on each other. Others simply stopped moving, their pilots dead or paralyzed. It works, Yuna breathed. It actually works. All ships, deploy resonance weapons, Jinho ordered. Focus fire on the hive ships. Take them down, one at a time. The battle shifted. Humans were still outnumbered, still losing ships. But now they had an edge. The resonance weapons disrupted the Scourge coordination. Without the hive mind directing them, the creatures became less effective, but the Scourge adapted. The Queen vessel, still hidden in the center of their formation, began sending new signals. The swarm regrouped, focusing their attacks on ships that used the resonance weapons. They're learning, Daehyun reported. They know what we're doing. Then we need to take out the Queen before they adapt completely, Jinho said. All ships. I need the Queen vessel located now. Junho's squadron found it. He was chasing a Scourge fighter through the debris field when his sensors picked up something massive. The readings were off the scale. Command. This is Red Leader. I've got something. Sending coordinates. The data reached the Indomitable, and Jinho saw it on the display. The Queen vessel was enormous, 10 times the size of the largest human ship. It was surrounded by layers of defenders, and it was slowly moving away from the battle. It was trying to escape. That's it, Jinho said quietly. That's our target. He turned to his crew. All heavy elements, converge on the Queen. Everything we have. If it gets away, this fight means nothing. Every capital ship in the fleet changed course. They fought through the Scourge defenders, taking fire, losing shields, but pushing forward. The Queen was trying to reach jump distance, trying to flee. Daehyun's destroyer was in the lead, shields down to 30%, 2 engines failing. But he kept going. Soul's pride to all ships. We're going to need covering fire. Negative, Pride. Jinho's voice came back. Fall back. You're too damaged. With respect, Admiral. No. Daehyun looked at his crew. They were battered and exhausted. They were also ready. We're closest to the Queen. We can reach it before the heavy ships. Just need you to clear us a path. There was silence on the comm. Then, all ships, concentrate fire on the Queen's escorts. Give the Pride a corridor. The fleet opened fire. Hundreds of weapons targeted the Scourge defenders around the Queen. It wasn't enough to kill them all, but it created a gap, a narrow window. Daehyun took it. Soul's Pride accelerated on its remaining engines, dodging fire, shields failing section by section. They reached the Queen vessel and got close. Closer than any ship should be. Close enough to see the thing's skin moving, to see the organs pulsing beneath the surface. Fire everything, all weapons, every last missile. The destroyer emptied its magazines into the Queen at point-blank range. Explosions rippled across the massive vessel. And then, Soul's Pride fired its resonance weapon, tuned to maximum power, aimed directly into the Queen's neural center. The effect was catastrophic. The Queen vessel convulsed. Its bioelectric signals went haywire, sending chaos through every Scourge creature in the system. The hive mind, stretched across thousands of ships, suddenly lost its center. All across the battle space, Scourge ships began to fail. Some attacked each other. Some simply stopped moving. The coordination that made them deadly fell apart. All ships, press the attack, Jinho ordered. Don't let them regroup. The human fleet surged forward. With the hive mind broken, the fight became a slaughter. Individual scourge ships were no match for coordinated human tactics. One by one, the hive ships died. The swarm scattered. 3 hours later, it was over. The human fleet floated in Helion space, battered but victorious. They had lost 47 ships and over 8,000 crew, but they had saved 5 billion lives. On the indomitable bridge, Jinho received reports from across the system. The Scourge were fleeing. Helion was safe. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of it settle. Then he opened them and got back to work. Get me casualty reports, and someone find me Soul's Pride. Daehyun's destroyer was found drifting, life support failing, but the crew was alive. They were picked up by rescue ships within the hour. On the planets below, beings of a dozen different species looked up at the stars and knew they had been saved. Not by the Council. By humans who had come when no one else would. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours of the battle's end, every major world in the galaxy knew what had happened at Helion. Earth had violated Council law and deployed a massive military force. The Scourge had been defeated. 5 billion lives had been saved. The Council chamber was in chaos. Ambassador Mira Choi stood once again at the human podium. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Half the Council wanted to condemn Earth immediately. The other half seemed uncertain, and the gallery, normally empty, was packed with refugees from the Outer Rim worlds. High Arbiter Ullman called for order, his crystal form glowing with agitation. This council will come to order. Ambassador Choi, humanity has violated the direct orders of this council. You deployed military forces without authorization. You engaged in warfare in contested space. Explain yourself. That's it, one of the Benesses. Well thing. That's it, one of the Benesses. Well thing. That's it, everything year 7. Mira took a breath. She had prepared for this. High Arbiter, members of the Council. Earth acted because action was necessary. We offered to help through proper channels. That help was refused. Meanwhile, systems were falling, and billions were dying. We could not stand by. Councillor Vreth rose from his seat, mandibles clicking angrily. You could not stand by? Or, you would not? There is a difference. Ambassador, the Council exists to prevent exactly this kind of unilateral action. If every species acted on their own judgment, we would have chaos. With respect, Counselor, we already had chaos. The Scourge was spreading unchecked while this council debated. Earth saved 5 billion lives at Helion. Lives that would have been lost if we had waited for another vote. Another counselor spoke up, a reptilian being from the Theros Collective. The human argues from results, but results do not justify breaking the law. What happens next time Earth decides the Council is moving too slowly? Do they simply act again? Where does it end? Before Mira could respond, something unexpected happened. A voice called out from the gallery. The Council should be ashamed. Security moved to remove the speaker, but Ullman raised an appendage to stop them. A figure stepped forward. Her name was Telsa, and she was from one of Helion's colony worlds. She wore simple refugee clothing, but she carried herself with dignity. I speak, High Arbiter. I speak for the 5 billion people who are alive because of Earth. I speak for my children, who would be dead if the humans had not come. And I ask this council, where were you? The chamber went silent. Telsa continued, her voice growing stronger. You sent observers. You formed committees. You voted to study the problem. But you did not send help. You did not send soldiers. You did not send weapons. You sent nothing that could save us. And now you want to punish the ones who did? Murmurs spread through the gallery. More refugees were nodding, some calling out in agreement. Counselor Vreth tried to regain control. This is not a matter of gratitude. This is about maintaining order and following established procedures. My family does not care about your procedures, Telsa shouted back. They care that they are alive. The humans broke your rules to save us. Perhaps your rules are the problem. The gallery erupted in cheers. Security tried to restore order, but the refugees would not be silenced. Representatives from a dozen species stood and demanded to be heard. High Arbiter Ullman called multiple recesses. Each time, the chaos resumed. The council had lost control of the narrative. Outside the chamber, protests were beginning on dozens of worlds. People who had been saved by Earth, or who had friends and family in the Outer Rim, were demanding answers. Why hadn't the council acted sooner? Why were they trying to punish Earth for doing what was right? The council reconvened 3 days later. This time, the mood was different. Several counselors who had been loudly condemning Earth were now quiet. They had received messages from their home worlds. Their constituents were not happy. Counselor Vreth surprised everyone by speaking first. High Arbiter, I move that we table the discussion of sanctions against Earth. There are more pressing matters to address. Ullman seemed relieved. The motion is recognized. What matters do you refer to? The Scourge remnants. Earth defeated the main force at Helion, but intelligence suggests scattered groups remain active. Furthermore, we have reports of other threats taking advantage of the confusion. The Kral Empire is moving ships into former Scourge territory. Pirate groups are raiding refugee convoys. The situation is deteriorating. Mira listened carefully. This was a shift. Vreth was moving away from punishing Earth and toward addressing the actual problems. Why? The answer became clear when another counselor spoke. The human action at Helion has revealed significant weaknesses in our defensive capabilities. Perhaps we should discuss forming a permanent military force under council control. With human leadership, I assume? Why not? Vreth replied, surprising everyone again. The humans have proven they can fight effectively. They have weapons and tactics we do not possess. If we are to address these new threats, we need their expertise. The chamber filled with arguments. Some counselors agreed. Others were horrified at the idea of giving humans official military authority. The debate went on for hours. Military, WDPS. Meanwhile, Admiral Jinho Park was dealing with a different kind of chaos. His fleet had returned to Earth space, and the message traffic was overwhelming. Dozens of species were contacting Earth directly, bypassing the Council entirely. Some wanted to buy human weapons. Others wanted military advisors. A few wanted to hire human mercenaries. We're not mercenaries, Jinho told his staff, and we're not selling weapons to anyone who asks. But sir, some of these offers are substantial. We could fund the entire Navy for a decade with what the Kelborn Consortium is offering. No, Jinho was firm. We didn't fight at Helion for profit. We fought because it was right. I won't cheapen that now. Captain Daehyun entered the room, his arm in a sling from injuries sustained in the battle. Admiral, we have another situation. Several species are asking if they can send observers to our training facilities. They want to learn our tactics. Jinho considered this. That's different. Knowledge sharing isn't the same as selling weapons. What do you think? I think we should do it, Daehyun said. But carefully. We choose who we teach. And we make it clear, this isn't about creating an Earth empire. It's about helping others defend themselves. Agreed. Draft a proposal. Back at the council, the deadlock continued. Some species wanted to embrace Earth's methods. Others wanted to maintain the old system. Nobody could agree on a path forward. Then the Kral Empire attacked. The target was a council border world called Meridian. The Kral had been a minor power for centuries, content to stay in their own territory. But they had been watching the council's response to the Scourge crisis. They saw weakness and indecision. The attack came without warning. Crawl battleships jumped in, destroyed the orbital defenses, and began landing troops. The Council world sent desperate calls for help. The Council convened an emergency session. High Arbiter Ullman called for calm and proposed forming a committee to study the crawl situation and develop a response plan. The response from the gallery was immediate and furious. Refugees and citizens who had packed the chamber for days erupted in anger. "More committees? More study?" someone shouted. "Meridian is burning right now." Ambassador Choi watched the chaos and made a decision. She activated her communicator and sent a coded message to Earth. Just 3 words. Helion Protocol. Meridian. On Earth, Admiral Jinho received the message. He looked at his staff. "How fast can we get a strike force to Meridian?" 18 hours if we push the engines. Do it. And this time, we're not asking permission first. The Council was still debating when human ships jumped into the Meridian system. There were only 30 vessels, a fraction of what had fought at Helion. But they were enough. The Crawl had not expected resistance. They certainly had not expected humans. The Earth force hit them hard and fast, using tactics the Crawl had never seen. Within 6 hours, the Crawl fleet was retreating, their invasion force stranded on the surface. Human Marines deployed to Meridian and helped evacuate civilians, while the local forces dealt with the remaining Crawl troops. By the time the Council authorized a response force, the crisis was already over. When Ullman received the report, he seemed to age centuries in moments. His crystal form dimmed. The humans have acted again, without authorization, without consultation. But this time, the response was different. Several counselors stood and applauded. More joined them. Within minutes, half the council was on their feet, acknowledging what everyone now understood. The old system was broken. Earth had proven it twice, and the galaxy had a choice: adapt or die. Counselor Vreth approached Ullman privately after the session. "High Arbiter, we need to face reality. The humans are not going to stop acting. They have shown they will help when help is needed, regardless of our rules. We can either work with them or lose all relevance." Ullman was silent for a long time. Then he said, "What do you propose?" "A new organization. Separate from the Council but recognized by it. Species who want to take direct action to defend themselves and others. Let the humans lead it. Let others join if they wish. The Council can maintain its role for diplomacy and trade. But defense becomes this new group's responsibility. You are proposing we officially split the Council's authority. I am proposing we acknowledge what has already happened. The humans have created a new model whether we like it or not. Better to accept it and maintain some influence than to fight it and lose everything." High Arbiter Ullman thought about this for days. He consulted with counselors. He reviewed intelligence reports. He watched footage of human ships saving Meridian while the Council debated. Finally, he called Ambassador Choi to a private meeting. "Ambassador, your species has made the Council look foolish. Twice. That was not our intention, High Arbiter. Perhaps not. But the result remains." He paused. "However, you have also saved billions of lives, and you have shown that the old ways are insufficient for the threats we face. So, I will ask you directly. What does Earth want?" Mira chose her words carefully. "We want to help. We want to save lives. We don't want to rule anyone or impose our will. But we also will not stand by when we can act. If that means working outside the Council, we will do so." Ullman nodded slowly. "Then, let us discuss a different arrangement. One that acknowledges your independence while maintaining some structure. Because, Ambassador, whether this Council likes it or not, you have started something. The question now is whether we shape it together or watch it grow beyond all control." Mira smiled. "High Arbiter, I think we can work something out." 6 months had passed since the Battle of Helion, and the galaxy looked very different. Fleet Admiral Jinho Park stood on the observation deck of the new coalition headquarters, watching ships from 43 different species conduct joint training exercises. Destroyers from Earth flew alongside cruisers from the Helion worlds. Fighter squadrons mixed human pilots with aliens who had never seen a human 6 months ago. It was chaos. But it was organized chaos. Impressive, isn't it? Ambassador Mira Choi joined him at the window. Terrifying is more accurate. Jinho replied. 6 months ago, we were breaking galactic law. Now we're training half the galaxy how to fight. 43 species is hardly half. It's 43 more than I expected. Jinho watched a formation of mixed ships execute a difficult maneuver. They were getting better. How are things with the Council? 1. Mira made a face. Complicated. The Council still exists. Still handles trade and diplomacy. But nobody takes them seriously anymore on defense matters. Half the member species have joined us. The other half are watching to see what happens. And the ones who hate us? They're drafting another resolution condemning our existence. It'll fail like all the others. She smiled. Hard to condemn the group that keeps saving people. The Coalition of Free Systems had been formed 3 months after Meridian. It started as an informal alliance between Earth and the species they had saved. But it grew quickly. Every time the Council hesitated and the Coalition acted, more species joined. They called it the Coalition because that's what it was. Not an empire, not a federation, just a group of worlds that had decided they would rather defend themselves than wait for committees to authorize action. Earth led because Earth had the experience and the willingness to act. But the leadership was shared. Every member species had a voice. Every world contributed what it could. Captain Dae-Hyun Kim commanded one of the Coalition's most unique ships. The Harmony was a cruiser with a crew from 7 different species. His human tactical officers worked alongside alien engineers. His weapons officer was from Helion. His navigator was Kasari. It should have been a disaster. Different species, different languages, different ways of thinking. But somehow, it worked. Captain, we're approaching the patrol route. His navigator reported. Take us in slowly. Sensors on maximum. They were patrolling the outer rim, hunting for Scourge remnants. Small groups still existed, scattered and disorganized, but still dangerous. The Coalition had made it their mission to eliminate every last one. Contact, the sensor officer called. Scourge biosignatures, bearing 270. Battle stations. Tactical, give me options. His Helion weapons officer studied the display. It's a small group. Maybe 20 ships. We can handle them. No, Dae-Hyun said. We call for support. That's the new protocol. 6 months ago, humans fought alone. Now they fought as a team. Dae-Hyun sent the alert. And within minutes, 3 more Coalition ships arrived. They surrounded the Scourge group and eliminated them with minimal casualties. It was how things worked now. Nobody fought alone. Dr. Yuna Lee was teaching a class on weapons development to scientists from a dozen species. Her resonance weapon technology had been shared with all Coalition members. Now, they were working together to improve it. The key is understanding the enemy's biology, she explained. Every species is different, so every weapon needs to be adapted. The Scourge use bioelectric communication. The Crawl use encrypted quantum signals. We need different tools for different threats. A young Kasari scientist raised a claw. Dr. Lee, my people would never have thought to weaponize disruption frequencies. How did humans develop this? Yuna smiled. We're good at finding creative solutions to problems, sometimes too good. But we learned a long time ago that sharing knowledge makes everyone stronger. That's why we're teaching you, instead of keeping the technology secret. It was a philosophy that defined the Coalition. Earth could have hoarded its military advantages. Instead, they shared everything. Tactics, weapons, training methods. Some Earth military advisors had been horrified at first, but Jinho had been firm. We're not building an empire, he had told them. We're building a defense network. That means everyone needs to be strong. Commander Heijin Kang ran the Coalition's Special Operations Training Center. She taught soldiers from species who had never had military forces before. Some were natural fighters. Others struggled with the concepts. Again, she shouted at a mixed squad running through urban combat drills. You're thinking like individuals. Think like a team. Cover each other. Communicate. Trust your squad mates. A Helion soldier spoke up. Commander, my people have no military tradition. We were scientists and artists before the scourge came. How can we learn this so quickly? You learn because you must, Heijin replied. Nobody is born a soldier. You become one through training and will. Your people survived the scourge by being smart. Now I'm teaching you to be dangerous too. The training continued. Day after day, the coalition grew stronger. But not everyone was happy about it. The Galactic Council met in emergency session for the 15th time that month. High Arbiter Ullman looked exhausted. His crystal form had lost much of its glow. The humans continue to expand their coalition, one counselor complained. They now have agreements with 43 species. Soon, they will have more members than we do. Then perhaps those species see value in what the coalition offers, Counselor Vreth replied. He had become an unlikely ally of humanity, seeing the coalition as the future, while the council was stuck in the past. Value? They see human military power. They see protection. But at what cost? The coalition operates outside all established laws. The coalition operates within laws, Vreth corrected. Just not the council's laws. They have their own charter, their own rules, and those rules have been more effective at maintaining peace than anything this council has done in decades. The argument continued, but it was increasingly clear that the council had lost, not through military defeat, but through irrelevance. The coalition did what the council could not: act quickly, fight effectively, and protect people. 3 weeks after that council session, the Krull Empire tried again. They attacked 3 systems simultaneously. Thinking the coalition couldn't respond to multiple threats at once, they were wrong. The coalition fleet was larger now, with ships from multiple species. They split into task forces and responded to all 3 attacks within hours. At each location, mixed coalition forces defeated the Krull quickly and efficiently. But this time, after the battles, something different happened. Instead of simply driving the Krull back, coalition forces pursued them. They traced the attack fleets back to their staging bases and destroyed them. They sent a message to the Krull leadership: attack coalition worlds, and we will retaliate. It was aggressive. It was harsh. It was also effective. The Krull Empire sued for peace within a week. The council condemned the coalition's aggressive response. Nobody paid attention. Ambassador Mira Choi sat in a meeting with representatives from 20 species who were considering joining the coalition. They had questions, concerns, fears. She addressed each one. Joining the coalition means taking responsibility for your own defense, she explained. We will help you train. We will share our knowledge. But we won't do the fighting for you. Everyone contributes. What if the council sanctions us? One representative asked. They might. They probably will. But ask yourself, what's more important? Following council rules or protecting your people? A representative from a small farming world spoke up. My people have no warriors. We grow food and trade. What can we contribute? Food is vital, Mira replied. Fleets need supplies. Soldiers need to eat. Not every contribution has to be military. We need farmers, engineers, teachers, doctors. Everyone has something to offer. By the end of the meeting, 15 of the species voted to join. The coalition was now 58 members strong. Admiral Jinho Park reviewed intelligence reports late into the night. The scourge were mostly gone. The crawl were contained, but new threats were emerging. Pirate groups were getting organized. Some species on the council were talking about forming their own military alliance to counter the coalition. The galaxy was changing, and not everyone liked the new direction. "You look troubled," Daehyun said, entering the office. "I am troubled. We started this to save lives, but now we're becoming a power block. Other species are scared of us. Should we stop? No, but we need to be careful. Power corrupts. We've seen it happen throughout human history. What makes us think we're immune?" We're not immune," Daehyun agreed. "But we have something others didn't. We have transparency. Every member species has a voice. We share information. We don't operate in secret. For now. But what about in 10 years? 20? When the people who remember why we started this are gone?" Daehyun had no answer for that. The first Coalition Congress met 1 month later. Representatives from all 58 member species gathered in a massive hall on a neutral station. It was chaotic, with dozens of languages being spoken, and 100 different cultures trying to find common ground. Admiral Jinho Park stood at the podium to give the opening address. He looked out at the assembled representatives and felt the weight of what they had built. 6 months ago, he began, Earth acted alone because nobody else would. We saved Helion. We stopped the crawl at Meridian. We broke every rule the Council had because those rules were getting people killed. He paused, letting that sink in. Today, we stand here as 58 species working together. We are not an empire. We are not conquerors. We are people who decided that sitting idle while others die is not acceptable. We are people who said, "Fine. We'll do it ourselves." The hall erupted in applause. Representatives from species who had once been enemies were now standing together, united by a common purpose. "But we must remember something," Jinho continued when the noise died down. "We have power now. Real power. And power is dangerous. We must never use this power to dominate others. We must never become what we opposed." "How do we prevent that?" someone called out. "By staying true to our principles. By helping those who cannot help themselves. By remaining transparent and accountable. And by remembering that we exist to defend, not to conquer." He looked across the assembly. The council said we would bring chaos. They said unilateral action would destroy galactic peace. They were wrong. We brought something better. We brought a galaxy where anyone who needs help can find it. Where threatened worlds don't have to wait for committees. Where fine, we'll do it ourselves, is not rebellion, but responsibility. More applause, more cheers. Jinho raised his hand for silence. But we must remain vigilant. Not just against external threats, but against ourselves. We must always ask, are we doing this for the right reasons? Are we helping or hurting? Are we defending or dominating? He stepped back from the podium. This Congress will meet regularly to address these questions. Every member has equal voice. Every concern will be heard, because that's what makes us different from the Council. We listen. We adapt. The Congress continued for 3 days. They established rules for engagement, protocols for new members, and oversight committees to prevent abuse of power. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Captain Daehyun Kim watched the proceedings from the gallery. Beside him sat Telsa, the refugee from Helion who had spoken out in the council chambers months ago. She had become an advocate for the coalition, traveling to worlds and telling her story. "Do you think it will work?" she asked. "I don't know," Daehyun admitted. "We're trying something new. Building a defense coalition based on voluntary cooperation instead of enforced authority. It could fall apart at any moment, but it hasn't yet." "No, it hasn't." Below them, representatives were debating the proper response to pirate activity in the frontier regions. Some wanted aggressive action. Others preferred measured responses. They were finding middle ground, compromising, working together. It was messy. It was slow. But it was working. The galaxy has learned something, Telsa said. When humans say fine, we'll do it ourselves, they don't mean just humans. They mean everyone willing to act. Daehyun smiled. That's the real trouble the Council faces. We didn't create a human empire. We created a movement. And movements are much harder to stop. The final session of the Congress ended with a ceremony. Each member species sent a ship to a central formation. 58 vessels from 58 worlds. All different designs. All different purposes. But all flying together. Admiral Jinho Park watched from his flagship. Beside him, Dr. Yuna Lee monitored the sensor data. Commander Heejin Kang coordinated the formation. Ambassador Mira Choi prepared diplomatic messages. They were human, but they weren't alone anymore. All ships reporting ready, the communications officer said. Good. Jinho looked at the formation one last time. Send the message to all coalition worlds. The first Congress has concluded. We stand together. We stand ready. And to anyone who threatens the innocent, we will respond. The message went out across the galaxy. On hundreds of worlds, billions of beings received it. Some felt relieved. Some felt threatened. Some felt hope. And in the council chambers, High Arbiter Ullman read the message and knew the old order had truly ended. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it. Not through conquest, but through example. When people needed help and nobody else would give it, humans acted. And in acting, they showed others they could act too. The real trouble wasn't that humans said, fine, we'll do it ourselves. The real trouble was that everyone else started saying it with them.